Hello, I decided to do recipes from both of my grandmothers. I already did my grandma Predmore's, so it's time to do my grandma Beckley. So I'm going to be doing a recipe from her family's cookbook. It's called From Our Family's Heart with Love. It says that it was printed in 1999. Her maiden name was Ackerman, so this is full of Ackerman family recipes. This recipe in here was submitted by her. It's called Divinity. It's one of my mom's favorite things that my grandma used to make. There's going to be a few things happening at once, so I might not be able to record everything that I'm doing, but I'm going to try and get as much as I can. From what I understand, this recipe can be a little hard. My mother accidentally made caramel or something like caramel when trying to make it one time. I do believe she wasn't using a candy thermometer, so that was probably 90% of the problem. I went to Hy-Vee today to get ingredients for this recipe, and the little old lady checking me out did ask what I was making, and I told her Divinity, and she was very excited because she hasn't heard about anybody making Divinity in a long time. I'll try and insert a picture, but she did forget to put something in her recipe, so she did have to handwrite in here an addition to her own recipe. We're going to have to heat sugar up on the stove, but while that's happening, I'm going to have to beat egg whites. So I'm going to put everything in the pot that needs to go to the stove and get that going with the candy thermometer, which I had to go buy last night because I did not own one, apparently. The instructions for the candy thermometer said to make sure that the thermometer doesn't rest on the bottom of the pan, but reading farther, it says to make sure the bottom of the glass part isn't touching. So this little steel part here can be touching. I will put that in before I do that. I just wanted to make sure that the candy thermometer fit on the edge of whatever pot I'm using. I'm gonna need 3 cups of sugar. One thing you might notice about this recipe is it might have an unholy amount of sugar in it. That's pretty on par for my grandma Beckley. Saying she had a sweet tooth is putting it lightly. Okay, so we need 3/4 of a cup of light corn syrup. So we're gonna do 1/4 of a cup. I'm just gonna kind of set that in there and let it drain while I measure my 1/2 of a cup, because I believe 1/4 and a half equals 3/4 of a cup. Anybody who knew my grandma should not be surprised that one of her favorite recipes contains this much sugar and corn syrup. She did used to pour straight corn syrup right onto her pancakes. She did live to be 96, so anybody wondering after the corn syrup and sugar comment, that probably wasn't the best idea. I just stirred it out of habit. Probably wasn't the best idea because now all the corn syrup stuck to my spoon. And then we need a 1/2 cup of water. 1/2 cup of water. Great. There's our corn syrup, sugar, water mixture before I put it on the stove. I'm gonna throw a candy thermometer in there. And then I need to cook it. Our sugar mixture is over on the stove. It needs to cook over medium heat until it hits 252 degrees or medium ball stage. My candy thermometer is not super detailed, so it doesn't say medium ball, and it kind of goes from like 240 to 260. So I'm gonna be watching it and trying to get as close as I can. Up the thermometer a little ways, it also says soft crack and hard crack. Those are candy textures and candy consistencies. For anybody wondering, that's what that means. I will be going over there occasionally to stir it because I don't want the sugar to all sit on the bottom and brown. I don't want to burn that sugar on the bottom. A safety tip is be very careful when making candy. When the sugar is hot and in liquid form, if it gets on your skin, it's very hard to remove. So more or less what's going to happen if you accidentally get sugar on you in its liquid form is it's going to sit there, and since your skin's colder than it is, it's going to start to harden immediately. So you're going to have a very hard time pulling that off or washing that off, and it's just going to sit there and continue to burn you. So that's my little public service announcement about cooking with sugar, making candy. It can be very dangerous, so try and keep like small children or animals out of the room so you don't accidentally burn them or burn yourself. While the syrup mixture is cooking, we need to beat egg whites. We need 2, and then a pinch of salt. We need to beat it until foamy. Here's our 2 egg whites. Here's what I believe a pinch of salt is. I have my mixer locked. The egg whites and salt are in there. I'm going to turn it on to about medium low speed, so like 4 probably. I need to beat the egg whites until it's foam. I am going to go check my syrup mixture while this is happening. So let me get this going and I'll go monitor the sugar. I am using my whisk head for this. That is what I mean by foamy. We need to add gelatin powder. There's 2 variations of this recipe. One where you use unflavored gelatin and another where you use flavored gelatin. Because I make bad life choices, we will be making both. So you need 1 envelope of plain gelatin. I'm going to throw that in here. Mix it until it forms peaks. So we're going to mix it probably on about the same speed and let it form peaks. I'm going to go check on my syrup again. My mixer is sounding a little bit off, like the whisk is hitting the bottom of the bowl a little more than usual. I don't know if it's just because there's not very much in there or if something's wrong, but we're going to keep going. Here's how our syrup's coming. We're almost there. It's kind of hard to see the thermometer on the camera, it looks like. But we're just under 220, so we got a little bit more to go. Here's our egg mixture. We're almost at stiff peaks, so we'll just keep it going. We'll keep it going a little bit longer, but not too much longer. I would consider that stiff peaks. See how that is holding its shape? I'm going to turn it on to stir because it needs to be continuously stirred. Before it gets too loud for you to understand me, pretty much the next thing that's going to happen, once that syrup gets up to temp, I'm taking it off heat, bringing it over here, and while this is going, very carefully and slowly, I am going to pour the sugar mixture in here while the mixture is going. This will be our last look at the sugar. It's boiling, so like I said, it's very dangerous in this state. We're about 10 degrees away from our goal, so I'll take you back over to the mixer, and then we'll pour this in when it's done climbing those 10 degrees. Okay, it says to beat it until mixture holds its shape, which I think that's it. I mean, it's holding pretty well. I'm going to give it another minute, I think, to be safe. Okay, it wasn't quite a minute, but I think that's pretty good. And like looking at that, I think that's considered holding its shape good enough. The mixture's still hot, so you still need to be kind of careful when handling it. It said to use wax paper for the next step. I don't have wax paper. I have parchment paper, so hopefully it doesn't mess it up too much. I'm going to start on this side, I think. This was boiling sugar not too long ago, so this is still hot. Be careful. She says to use teaspoons and dab teaspoon amounts onto wax paper. Knowing my grandma, she meant like just kitchen spoons worth. The small kitchen spoons. Usually she referred to those as teaspoons. And you got to work with a little bit of speed because the sugar is slowly cooling down. And once it cools down, it becomes a harder candy. It's not as bad to work with as the boiling hot sugar, but still be careful. So our regular batch of Divinity minus nuts is done. I've cleaned it away. Now I'm going to do the variation that uses flavored Jello. Here's what my grandmother has to say about that. For flavors, add a 3-ounce package of Jello, omitting the plain gelatin and vanilla. So we're going to try peach Jello and see how that goes. We did not get sugar-free because I don't think my grandma ever willingly ate sugar-free Jello in her life. So I'm gonna assume she didn't use sugar-free Jello if she ever flavored this. I don't know why I've chosen to make the variation. This will be the 4th recipe I've cooked today, and I don't know why I do this to myself. All right, I have the sugar over there on the stove. Cleanup for the Divinity, at least the part where it became Divinity, was easier than I thought it was going to be. I pretty much put my whisk attachment and the bowl in the sink with hot water and dish soap and let it sit while I ate dinner. And then afterwards, all the sugar had dissolved, so I just gave it a quick rinse and a little more scrub with soap, and we are good to go. Let's get going with this variation of Divinity. I'm probably not going to record all of it because it's pretty much the same. I'm just kind of giving you an update, and then I'll show you it as I'm mixing because the color I'm sure will be different. Here's our nice foamy egg and salt mixture. We're going to be adding a 3-ounce gelatin pack now. I'm pretty sure my grandma used to use maraschino cherries as like a topper for Divinity. Hopefully peach is okay. Divinity is more or less a way to transport as much sugar as possible into your body. So hopefully the peach is not too bad. It's that nice natural pink peach color, as you can see. It smells very much like Peachos at this point. Ooh, it's starting to hold its shape a little more. Maybe we will get the peak. I think we're almost there. I put a little more light on it so you can see it better, but it's definitely a lovely bubblegum pink color. I'm going to turn it off because I think the sugar mixture is getting a little bit closer. I don't want to overbeat it. As soon as the sugar is about done, like 2 degrees away from being done, I'm going to pop over here real quick, turn the mixer on, and start pouring it in. One thing I noticed with the last batch that probably with this batch, the thicker it gets, the higher you have to turn up the mixer because it has a hard time mixing it. All right, let's check it now. All right, I'm gonna call it. That looks pretty good to me. It's, I would say it's holding its shape fairly well, if not amazing. Yep. We're holding our shape. I did use my mixer at a little higher of a speed this time. So the Divinity is a little hotter. So I'm going to keep that in mind while plating it because I don't want to get burnt. The consistency with this one seems fluffier. I would guess is probably the change in jello. It just seems a lot fluffier. But it could be multiple things. Hopefully, it still tastes okay. The last batch of Divinity looked more like what I was used to. I am glad I chose one of Grandma's recipes out of the typed cookbook. I have some handwritten ones, and Grandma's handwriting could be a little hard to read at times. We're talking like you would need the D. Beckley Rosetta Stone to figure out what she was trying to convey to you. Although I did follow her recipe, and it looks like we have two completely different foods, and I'm not sure how that happened.